Hi, and welcome to the Modern Sense podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Thompson, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Shay Steacy. Shay is an industry veteran with over 20 years experience. She's a certified financial planner and a money coach, and I'm honored that she is now planning for Modern Sense. So, good morning, Shay, and thank you for joining me on the podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
So, just as a interesting backstory, Shay and I have actually known each other for 24 years, I think.
Just getting up there.
Yeah, we are not that old, are we, Shay? Should we
Yeah,
say where we first met? Is that important?
sure.
So that will everyone will know exactly how old we are. We're the same age, and Shay and I met because she was a university roommates in first year with my high school best friend. And, full circle moment. We both ended up in financial services and both ended up as financial planners and as advice only financial planners, albeit in different paths. So it's just very funny and serendipitous that we end up here 24 years later after
Yeah.
meeting you in your dorm room. So
Yeah. And we're not dressed in the same dress because we were both in her wedding parties.
yeah,
You know?
that's right. We were both in that same wedding party now, which feels like many moons ago as
It
well.
was.
So
So
let
thank
us
you,
not age.
Laura.
So thank you, Laura, for introducing us, and hopefully Laura will listen to this and have a little laugh at that.
Hmm.
But let's talk about you. As I said at the top, Shay has recently joined Modern Sense as one of our wonderful financial planners, but she is not new to financial planning. In fact, she is probably more of a veteran than I am in the financial planning space. So I would love just words from your mouth to hear a little bit about you, your history in the financial planning space, and as you as a person as well, everything that you want to tell us about yourself.
Well, it all started on a cold winter's day. No, I will try to be succinct, but to also add some flavor and coloring around why I'm here and why I do what I do. So I went into university thinking that I was coming out as an accountant and I was going to be, a partner in a firm. And when I did some jobs in accounting, they were auditing type jobs, and I just kind of thought, I don't ever want to be the auditor. And I know that's not all accountants, but like that was my first experience in accounting. And I thought, like, no one wants to work with the auditor. No one likes when the auditor shows up. And it just got me thinking that there has to be a different way that I can take kind of my love of numbers but also working with people and understanding the person behind the numbers, and met a couple of certified financial planners and saw that they had like a work life balance, which is important for me, and that kind of got me into this world. So I actually graduated university being able to write my certified financial planner exam right away, and that was a great way of doing it, which I don't know how much of an option that is anymore. But that was kind of my path. And I took a little hiatus after school, went to Australia. Perfect thing to do after university is like take that gap year. And then I got my very first job in my home branch at RBC, like at my hometown. I was the person you'd open a bank account with or start investing with or, apply for loans, that sort of thing. And I learned a lot. I think the most important thing I learned was that I didn't want to work at the retail level in the bank. It was very salesy. And I've always kind of thought I'm not a salesperson. So, it wasn't about the advice that you would give to people. It was, how many accounts or credit cards did you sell and how many investments did you refer off, and it just wasn't for me. So after
Wait,
that,
are you telling me that's what happens at the bank, Shay?
yeah, a little
Really?
known, large known fact is like, let's just get as many people through the door and, sell as many widgets as we need to. And like, I always knew, like, no matter how well I sell, there's always going to be a below average. And I just don't love that. And the review meetings weren't about like what advice did you give to people. It was how much did you sell? Not okay. So I ended up moving. I moved from the bank to the high net worth side of the bank, and that's where I was able to spend a little bit more time kind of getting to know clients and do other things. And I'll just sum this up in, it was really hard for me to find my place there. When I never necessarily wanted to be like the main advisor on a team, because again, a lot of that is bringing in as much money. It's a very big sales role. And I guess I understand it, but it never felt like me. So I did a lot of things. I ended up in a role that was actually made for me. So there was an advisor on the team, there was an admin assistant on the team, and I was an associate advisor. And so I got to do financial plans for clients. I got to take them through like a wealth management process and enhance their experience. But what really struck me was that I started to feel like I was helping the rich get richer. Don't get me wrong, the clients were lovely, but the nature of a brokerage world is the more money you have to invest, the more investable assets you have, the higher the fee. And so the more you're worth to advisor, the bank, everything else.
I just want to say that really resonates with me as well, because that's the exact reason I left the brokerage industry. Is as much as I was helping people, I felt like I was also helping the rich get richer. So to hear it coming out of your mouth is actually like, wow, it's very, I don't want to say comforting, but it's very nice to know that other people who are in a very similar or in the same role as I am also feel the same way about it.
And that then became the challenge, as I was having people, whether it's my friends or, people I'd come about through, through life. If you're a financial planner, I have to come and talk to you. And some of my friends I just kind of knew, and other people, maybe I'd find out, but they didn't have enough money. And that was actually part of my role, was to encourage my advisor to start increasing his investment minimum for new clients so that we would have a more streamlined business that still paid well. And then that became my challenge of like, well, I can actually help these people who have questions. I also don't know where to send them. I don't know where they can get the good advice. And that was when I met someone who was doing this advice only planning thing. And we went for lunch, and I just went, you mean there's somewhere other than like the bank I can do planning? And it was completely eye-opening. And that was it. That was the beginning of the end of my career in the banks. And that was I left in 2018, and I've never looked back.
And some might say, this is a relatively new and burgeoning industry, advice-only financial planning. And the people that we know that have been doing it the longest have probably been in it for just over 10 years. I would say for the most part. There's a couple firms that have been longer standing than that, but I would even consider you to be a bit of an AOP veteran starting in 2018 compared to a lot of people who are now getting into the advice only industry. And, I'm only in 3 years. Some people we know have just started this year, and there's a lot more people coming to the forefront. So I would consider you an AOP veteran, to be honest.
Well, thank you. Makes me feel old, but that's fine.
No, yeah, experience, not old.
Experience, not old. So I think that was kind of it. Now, since I've been in the advice only planning world, I've worked in a couple of different ways. The most recent was that I quote unquote had my own firm. Not really. I was planning on my own. And it can be a lonely world. It also, like, if you're a small business owner, and this is in our world, this is in any small business, in any industry, you have to wear a lot of hats. And I think that I just knew that what I wanted to do was do the planning part of it, work with clients, help them through kind of their goals, and be less concerned about all of the other stuff that happens in a business. And that was kind of why we ended up here. I mean, we had talked, before and kind of tiptoed around it, but it just kind of made sense. And that goes back, Andrea, to you saying, like, this is a new industry. So like we're all still trying to figure out what the best way is to work with clients. And we're all trying to do very similar things. And so I think it finally felt really great to say like, no, we're getting far enough along now that there is like a team that I can join that has, other amazing women who have the same values in planning, who have the same challenges in, the business aspect of things. And why wouldn't we all work together to help more clients? Because I do feel like we can help more people because as a team, we can be more efficient.
I agree. And we had a team meeting last night, and I think what I love about it is that there are a lot of good and important voices now. It's not so much an echo chamber. It's much more collegial. It becomes very collaborative. We talk about, situations that maybe we need or would like a second opinion on. And so for me as the business owner, it's helpful as well to get feedback from the people that are planning for Modern Sense clients so that we can all ensure that we're rowing the boat in the right direction for our clients. I want to circle back to what you said about planning values and how you joined the team that has similar values. And I think this is a really important thing for us to discuss today. So let's start with you and your planning values. Like where have they originated? What are they? And let's talk about it.
In a way, I feel guilty that like one of my values in this world is that it's not always just about the numbers. There are a lot of ways that you can do things in planning. So there's often also never one right way or one best way. What I like to kind of say with my clients is it's their money, it's their goals, their priorities, it's not mine. And so something may make more sense kind of dollars and cents wise, but if that doesn't resonate with the people that I'm working with for whatever reason, it becomes the least important way to do something. So I have a lot of conversations with my clients. I ask about their feelings, as cheesy as that may seem, but it's really important for me. If I try to solve for something because it makes sense in my financial planning brain or makes sense from a tax position and they either don't feel it or we're not addressing something that's like really weighing on them, that is more personal, that is more kind of qualitative, like about their life, then it's not going to matter how much I necessarily solve over here because the two things really have to come together. So I kind of say like I'm part money coach, part unofficial therapist, for sure unofficial, but I'm all financial planner. So it takes my relationships with clients maybe a little bit deeper than someone who just focuses on straight numbers, facts and figures and that sort of thing. And it might not be for everyone. That approach might not be for every client, but I'm also totally okay with that because that's important.
Yeah. And I think what you are talking about and the evolution of financial planning from when we learned it in school to what it is truly evolved to in this iteration is because we're not associated with products or sales or anything of that nature where we're just giving advice, is we can really focus on the component of financial planning that's the softer side of planning. I think to be a good financial planner, emotional IQ and emotional intelligence is part of our job. Whether or not we're trained to be unofficial therapists or not, having the ability to look into a client's virtual eye, let's say on a Zoom call, and read their body language and understand, like you said, how they're feeling about the conversation, about the direction of it, and does it vibe with them and their goals and their values? Like that's a really important part of planning. And I think that, for people who are listening to this that might be considering a planner, what is it that might jive with you or not? Like, is the approach of I want someone to truly hear me out and to listen to what's important to me, or are you more focused on the technical side, the numbers side, where it's more of that engineering mindset? And I think there's space for all of that, certainly, but the values that you talk about that you bring to the table are more on the, you can do the technical and will do the technical, absolutely, but focus on the softer side of financial planning.
And this is making me think about an experience I had with kind of on the brokerage side at one of the big banks. Is I was involved in the rollout of women in wealth training. And a lot of it was about the fact that, you know, 3 out of 4 women will leave their husband's advisor like after their husband passes away. And, however many $1 trillion is going to be controlled by women in the next, whatever, however many years. And like longevity says that, women will be around longer. And if you really look at the root of that, the reason that they wanted to now connect with women in the relationship or women, the root of that was because that's where the money was going to flow. And for me, it's really important for me to know both partners because they're both involved in the money. And maybe it's easier for me to do that because I'm not paid or compensated based on the assets that I manage. But that again, just like what's the ulterior motive in that? And it was more so that rather than actually doing what's best for the people involved. So when I have clients, I make sure that I understand what both of them are thinking, how both of them feel. And sometimes it's actually very funny sometimes when you get like a look like from one to the next, like, what do you mean? Like, I've never heard you say that before, because I like to spark conversation and not make assumptions about certain things. And if they're on different ends of a spectrum or they have different thoughts or beliefs about something, we're ultimately planning for them as a couple. So we need to try to create a joint strategy that both of them feel comfortable with. So that's not saying that every single time we meet ever, I have to have both people. Often there is someone in a relationship who takes more of I don't want to say lead, but yeah, the lead on things, or they're more involved. But again, for me, they're creating a strategy for the two of them. I also want both people to know at least like why they've made certain decisions. And I do kind of wonder, what if something happened to the main decision maker? I want the other person to feel like they could step up or they know what to do in that case.
I had a LinkedIn post that I wrote on this last week on this very situation. And most of the feedback, let's just say on the post, was pretty positive. But there was one comment by an advisor who said, well, I don't see anything wrong. My wife doesn't know anything and she doesn't want to. I don't really see that there's anything wrong with that. And I think the point is, it's not that there's something wrong with there being a predominant money person. But when we're talking about financial planning and it being values and goals based, the values and goals of a family unit is often not just defined by one person, right? We're in a partnership. We're rowing the boat in the same direction together. So the values and goals of both people are of importance, whether or not one person is the one hitting the buttons, right? Theoretically. So I think it's important for people to understand that we don't have to have both spouses have their MBA in personal finance, but the other spouse has to be able to take the oars if the main spouse isn't able to, for whatever reason, and it can be a multitude of reasons. You don't have to be an expert in it, but you have to know, where are the keys to the car, so to speak. You have to know where to find everything. You have to know who to contact. You have to have a relatively good understanding of what your resources are. For you, Shay, and I know that this is sort of near and dear to your heart, when we talk about what spouses ought to know, I know that your planning beliefs are fundamentally centered around financial management and cash flow. So I would love for you to just talk a little bit about where your planning values are centered around when you're working with new clients.
This is something that before I left kind of the traditional industry to work with clients on an advice-only way, in an advice-only capacity, I didn't focus a lot on. And what I would do is kind of a lot of the plans I were doing were, okay, here's how much you can spend in retirement. Does that sound like enough? cool, right? Or here are the different areas we're going to take money from to be the most tax efficient or estate efficient or that sort of stuff. And all of that is very important. But especially, again, going back to the probably like a Gen X and Y area now, not ruling out that I don't work with other people, but that's a lot of who maybe I've attracted or kind of worked with, is actually pulling back on some of the more detailed or complex planning areas to focus on some of the fundamentals of someone's financial picture, their ins and outs of their money. How much comes in? How much goes out? Where are there areas to maybe improve or put towards other goals? How do we plan for what if scenarios? And for me, if the classic planning looks a lot at either retirement planning or investment planning. And again, really important. And the investments are certainly a means to the end. I often don't talk about those until further on in our planning engagement. So a question for retirement planning is often like, well, how much do you need to spend, right? Or how much do I need to have saved in order to have the things I want in retirement? And the answer that we need as planners for that is, well, how much are you going to spend? Because you may need to accumulate $1 million because you're going to spend $35,000 a year. You may need to accumulate $5 million because you're going to spend $200,000 a year. So getting to that, what are you spending, is ultimately really important. But if we pull that back to, well, what are you spending now, right? How much do we have to be able to put towards retirement, to be able to put towards our children's education, to be able to put towards a bigger home? But in all of that, how much do we have to actually enjoy our lives today? So can we still travel and do these things, right? Can we still afford to put our kids in activities and still save for retirement or all of those things? And for me, understanding what that looks like comes down to really getting a good feel on cash flow. And if you've noticed, I haven't used the word budget. Because like, one, budget is a dirty kind of word, but two, it's more about just being intentional with where you're putting your money. So with this also comes what I like to call like strategic banking. So how do we set up different bank accounts to help us better understand where our money is and what any savings we have is funding? How can we make things as automated as possible so that we're not worried about missing a bill payment or forgetting to put money aside or not having enough funds in the account when the mortgage payment comes out? And it seems like a simple thing to focus on, but it doesn't mean it's easy, right? And so I like to make sure that having that clarity on the fundamentals of a financial picture is there for clients before we move on.
For sure. And I also want to add to that, this is not an exercise for any particular income demographic. This is an exercise for all income demographics. You can have, all of the cash flow coming in the world, but still not have a good solid foundation as to how you're managing that cash flow on a day-to-day basis. You could also have very few resources coming in and do a wonderful job at managing your day-to-day and all of the iterations of that in between. So I think the nice thing about cash flow focused planning is that it is agnostic as to your income and net worth. It doesn't care. All it cares about is how do we make the best with your resources to ensure that you are comfortable today, that you are able to pay all your bills, as you say, but also enjoy your life today.
Yeah.
And still think about how can we then also plan for tomorrow. There is a behavioral financial element to this that I would love to get into with you as to the gratification that you see your clients coming into from this approach.
Yeah. So I think I've got two kind of stories that are somewhat near and dear to me. And one of them is I actually help plan for IVF treatments 4 clients who were starting their family. And we had a separate bank account that was called IVF. And we were planning for if things do work out, on the first time or not, those are like big and heavy conversations to have with people. But I have now held both their children, and that's pretty cool. So the, they knew that they had to put money aside, but like to have their kind of structure facilitate that and then reap the rewards was amazing. Another client was driving from the GTA out east, and I'm along the way. And so they stopped so that I could meet their new child. They could meet my new dog. But what felt great was when I was talking to them about when they were coming out, they're like, oh, you know what? We're just going to leave and get out of the city and like get a hotel because we have our travel budget. So it was just already there to spend. But to have the ability for people to spend money without guilt, I think is important as well. So sure, you know what? Some people do have, maybe it's an income problem. Maybe they aren't earning what they need to meet basics. And that's a really garbage problem to have. Like, it doesn't feel good. It's harder to solve for. And, there are people who have that struggle. Sometimes it's an expense problem, right? Maybe it is overspending or, big fixed costs that are an expense. Sometimes people just don't know if they can spend money, and we work hard, right? So as long as we're finding this balance between putting money away for like future us, but also being able to enjoy today, like that's another part of that.
Yeah. And I think that from a financial planning standpoint, so many people talk about the future and saving for the future, and there's very little emotional gratification for your future self today. And
Yeah.
the nice thing about the approach of cash flow planning for today is it gives you the ability to regulate a little bit more your day-to-day stress levels,
Yeah.
your ability to make those day-to-day decisions and be aware of where your money is and where it's going. And without, like you said, that guilt or that feeling of can I or can't I, or I'm just going to do it because I don't know. And, that lack of control, that feeling that you might have. And so I think you're right. It's fundamentally really important, but also incredibly gratifying.
Yeah. And in the age and stage that a lot of my clients are in, the way that their numbers look right now in cash flow may not even be what they look like next year. And sometimes just helping them through that to say, look, you know what? Your expenses are really high right now because you've got 2 kids in daycare. But, that is going to stop. And so at that point now we can accelerate retirement savings or other things. So to help people see a bigger picture is really important as well.
For sure. I have a funny financial planner faux pas story to tell about this.
No, do tell.
And hopefully my cousin's not listening to this, but a long time ago, when I started financial planning, my cousin asked me to do her financial plan. Now, this is when I didn't have a lot of experience in doing financial planning, and it's what I had learned from where I was at that stage. And it was very, projection based, very linear, very much by the book, if you will, in which, I gave her this report that was all, based on some future retirement age. And given their current savings levels, I told her, I'm really sorry, but you can't retire until you're 75. And I don't think you can afford to have a second child. This is what came out of my mouth. Now, I feel today, I feel appalled at my former self that I would even begin to utter those words to any human, let alone my cousin. And I remember them looking shocked and me not really understanding enough about planning and what planning was about at that time. It's not about taking data, putting it into a piece of software and seeing what it generates and reading the results. That's not what planning is. So I think that that's a really important first of all, not funny story, but I kind of laugh about it now. But also,
did you also tell her that they had to like die at 79? Like you
No.
you have to work until you're 75 and not live very long.
But I certainly did judge them based on their pet budget, and I have to say, and again, all these faux pas that you make based on really not having enough experience, to be honest, at the time, and not really understanding truly what planning was about. And what I will say, just to add to that, is as an advice-only planner compared to working in the brokerage, it was a completely different world this is only 3 years ago now for me. But I thought I was a good planner before. And then I came into this world and I realized that I felt like I knew nothing and that I was like a bit of a baby deer. And I've learned so much from other AOPs like yourself, like other colleagues that we have, just about truly what planning is about. And this conversation really, I think, exemplifies just that. So just wanted to share that funny story. It's a bit shameful, but I think also shows how important it is to be adaptive in the planning approach and also with cash flow.
My stories, I have a friend and she now lives with her parents because her financial planner told her that she needed to. And that was me. And this is actually a different story. That was us looking at her cash flow and her numbers and figuring out what she could change and what she couldn't. And I didn't tell her that she had to move back in with her parents, but I was able to show her the numbers and say, if you're living on your own, I'm not sure. If these are your expenses and this is your income and this is what you have to pay back, you don't have any money to do anything fun, or you don't have, you're going to have your debt kind of this much longer. And so sometimes the numbers will just explain maybe some hard things that we don't, want to not fun conversations. But I think it's also important that there is reality sometimes. So again, completely depends on the person and everything else. But I don't want to tell people what they can and cannot do. Sometimes the numbers may do that. I want to help them see if they make a choice here, they may not have a choice here. And getting somewhat granular on the cash flow helps people see that, and it resonates with them more. Maybe they believe it more, or they're like, okay, this is a real situation and I have to take action.
I liken that to being a bit of a facilitator, right? So it's not up to us to cast judgment and give answers all the time. I think it's about providing the clarity to allow our clients to be able to come to those decisions for themselves. And that is so powerful for so many clients that I've worked with in the past, is just having them feel more confident to make those decisions for their family, not having someone tell them what they should be doing for their family.
Yeah, for sure. And through all of that, I will just say, this is why I'm saying, but all financial planner, because in that is always on my mind. What do we need to put away? What are some good rules of thumb? What might, if things don't go according to plan, what could happen? Considering tax rates, all of that is underlying all of the things I do. But for me, it just needs to start in a different place.
Agreed. I love that. So I have a funny question to ask you. And maybe this is just to lighten the mood a little bit. If you had all the money in the world, and if money could buy happiness for you, what would you buy?
I'll give you the answer that money doesn't necessarily buy happiness. It can make things easier, doesn't buy happiness. I would probably have a hobby farm. I probably would, or, homestead. I love to be outside. I love to, grow my own food. I love animals. I think that would be probably where I end up. I'd be not barefoot and pregnant, but just barefoot. And then sure, traveling in there, I'd need to have, people come and look after the farm when I'm not there, because I get that it's not easy. But yeah, see parts of the world as well, but have my roots and have my friends and be kind to the animals and the earth.
I will come and visit you, and if you would let me be barefoot in your garden, in your vegetable garden with you, I would be
absolutely
so happy to.
Right? Oh my gosh. I'm not kidding. I still remember the first zucchini I grew. I have a picture of it. I'm so proud of me with my first zucchini in a community garden in Burlington, actually. So, you don't have to be out in, on a farm.
I'll send you
do it in the city.
I grew cucumbers for the first time this year, and I was really proud of my cucumbers. So I'll have to send you a picture after.
Amazing. I love it.
I had a client whose goal actually was to have a hobby farm and to financial independence, retire early.
Amazing.
That was what we were trying to work towards. So, and you talk about travel. Travel, I'm sure, resonates with many individuals listening to this today. So there are ways to plan for these things. They don't have to remain sort of pie in the sky ambitions. They can be tangible and they can be real.
Yeah.
And
I guess what I
that's
should say
what
is like
planning
I'd
can.
love Yeah, I'd love on my hobby farm is to have like a tiny home village. Like I want to be surrounded by my people. So one of the things is I live in a tiny house. This is my house, and I don't need more space than this. I love more outdoor space than this, but like that could also be on my farm as well. Is like having my people there. Community is
Amazing.
super important. And there's another, like, bringing it back to this, having one, the advice only planner community, but also like my little modern sense community is important as well.
Yeah. Not just the modern sense community, but the advice only planner community is a wonderful space that I found out of the brokerage world, where a lot of us are members of the Financial Planning Association of Canada. There is a monthly call for all AOPs, that's what we call each other, AOPs, to meet up on and to discuss, challenges with either, business planning or clients, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, shout out to the Financial Planning Association of Canada.
For sure.
And Shay mentioned her tiny home and some of her other values, and we'll probably do another podcast sometime in the future to talk about that element of her life, which is really impactful and I think resonates with a lot of individuals today who are tired of the excess and the overwhelm. So we will definitely talk about that. But for today, just to sort of leave you with anything, Shay, last words, anything else you want people to know about how you bring the personal to personal finance?
The personal. No, I mean, I really think we talked about a lot of it. What I will say is like, there is no shame or judgment with me when I do planning. If we need to learn from past behaviors, that is important. But I never want to judge or have people feel judged or shame from decisions that they've made or decisions that they want to keep making. And I do hope that that comes across when I work with people.
Thanks for that. Agreed. And thanks to everyone for listening today. Hopefully you found Shay's words and values impactful and resonating with you. And if you'd like to read more about Shay, you can find her on our website, modernsense.ca. And where else can they find you, Shay?
I'm doing a very lousy job keeping up my Instagram, but at Shay Steacy. It's kind of a mix of some business, some personal, but like a sustainability sprinkle here and there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and have a great day.
Okay. See ya.